Good evening. Good evening. This is Atiba, and this is Chalkboard Conversations podcast. We are back. It's 2021, and we are excited. We got a great show for you all tonight. We are. Good evening. Good evening. This is Atiba, and this is funny because I have my phone on. I'm sorry, so that came through. But good evening again. This is Atiba. This is Chalkboard Conversations podcast, and we are excited to be back with you guys. This is 2021. And we had some exciting stuff to talk about tonight. We had Georgia. We had Georgia big elections on Tuesday evening. I know many of us were staying up. I know I did, stayed up pretty late. And then yesterday we had I don't even know what to call it. I'll let my guests and a co-host to kind of define exactly what that was that we saw happening at the United States Capitol. And with that, I'd like to bring in Earl and Patrick.
Hey, happy
my
New Year.
Co-host. Hey, happy New Year. It's good to see you guys. It's been a couple of weeks and it's been a lot of stuff that's happened in that last couple of weeks. How are you guys doing?
I'm great.
We have three great guests tonight. We're gonna bring them in a few minutes, but before that, let's kind of do a recap. How was you all's Christmas and New Year's?
Patrick, you got to go first.
What can I say? It was my birthday, so it's one of the few times everything in America was closed down except for 7-Elevens and Chinese restaurants. So I enjoyed being the full focus of my family, things like that. Just a blessing to be under one roof, be healthy and all, and otherwise, it was a great moment.
I gotta say this. You know what, y'all? A few years ago, I was talking to Patrick. Patrick has been advising me for a long time on party politics, and Patrick started this whole thing about Atiba. You got like a notebook full of rhymes. I have no rhymes and I have no notebook, but clearly Patrick does.
Patrick, you can beatbox too, can't you? Patrick,
what can I say? Right? I was raised by hip hop. I mean, we're the generation, Atiba, you and I, that live between PA tapes and smuggled in, New York tracks. So, I can't change it. I mean, we bought, where we got our music from. We spent hours at Tower Records.
I'm mad at you because the other day when we were talking and you were saying you were moving stuff around in your garage, you were moving the notebooks and those mixtapes.
Yeah, I want to put them into a more secure location because I'm feeling very prophetic this year, especially what happened yesterday and kind of moving forward.
You put them in the vault.
Yeah. I'm putting them in the vault because there's a science in America called the double standard, and evidently there's nothing equal about the double standard about what's available for people who don't look like us versus people who look like us.
Earl,
what a double
standard? Hold on, Earl. Before I know, Earl. Let's not even get to the double standard yet. How was your vacation? It's good to see you got the fresh white on, dude. You're not supposed to wear white before Memorial Day.
I think that's at the end of last year. Technically, it's before Memorial Day this year.
Okay. I like it though. I
appreciate it.
You remember back in the day, we used to be like, it's so fresh and so clean.
If you could wear it and get away with it being white by 5-6 p.m., that was. I'm from New York. That's player status.
If you can wear it more than once and it's still white, is you winning.
I can say that about this one. No. Holidays are good. Got a chance to go visit my family. My sister, she's got a house down in Greensboro, so the whole family drove. And there's only 2 houses involved there. Everybody quarantined before. Like, we did it as safe as humanly possible. Everybody's still fine. It was a good time. Got some family pics taken in. It was good. It was a good time.
Good. Listen, we have our guests. We're gonna bring them in a couple minutes. But right. We had Georgia elections. Do you all believe that Georgia went blue?
Yeah.
I mean, the spirit of John Lewis is just living with us. I mean, if you think about the spirit and the homily and the expectation that he left for us all, and it's just been playing out. Georgia's come through in a way that I don't think anyone has seen in a long time. I think, I think of John Lewis, I think of Jimmy Carter, and I'm amazed that Georgia has come through. But there's a sweet science to when you're shocked and you're denied something, how you recover from it. And I say that with Stacey Abrams in mind. Those votes that they took away from her, which kind of moved the governorship outside of her wheelhouse, she reacted in a way which really is true leadership. I mean, just across the board. I mean, I can't say enough how she went back home and checked her homework and checked everything and began to work from that. She wasn't deterred at all. She actually took it as a badge of honor. And in 2 years, when she's running for governor, I will be there with everyone else to support her because she deserves it and she should get it.
Earl,
Agreed.
what were your thoughts yesterday when you no, not Georgia?
I can't follow up on that.
Go ahead. Yeah. What are your thoughts? What were your thoughts yesterday when you heard about what was going on at the Capitol?
So I was in Vegas when Ron Artest and Ben Wallace did their thing. It was almost like that, and except for I was at a gas station and not at a casino. I was at a gas station, and someone said, "Are they actually going into the Capitol?" And I watched it and literally could not believe my eyes. Like, next to September 11th, there are very few moments, and wherever you were when Donald Trump got elected, and wherever you were when Barack Obama got elected, this is one of those, where were you when you found out? I don't know. And here's the worst part. I don't even think they were that good at doing it. It's just they got away with it more than anybody else would have. But I don't want to jump the gun on that.
Well, let's find out where our guests were when all this stuff started happening. We've got Mo Ivory, Nicole Venable, and Jamal Simmons with us this evening. And I want to ask you guys. I mean, first off, we're going to go back into do an introduction, but we wanted to bring you all into the conversation real quick. And as we're doing this, Earl, if you can show the graphics on our guests. Nicole, what were your thoughts yesterday? Where were you? I know you live on the Hill, you work on the Hill. What were your thoughts when all that happened yesterday?
Gobsmacked, I think, was the first thing that I'll say. But to most people that know me, I do live on Capitol Hill. I'm within walking distance of Capitol Hill, worked there for a very long time. So my first thoughts were, I can't believe this is happening. That people, I have a reverence for what we call the people's house. And I just could not believe the disrespect that people were doing. That was number one. Number two, I couldn't believe the reaction of the police. In Washington, we're used to having these big protests and being prepared for them and understanding what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. And people have sort of an understanding about how you protest. This didn't sort of meet any of those expectations. And third, I got scared. The last time I felt scared in my house and on Capitol Hill was 9/11. I was actually on the Hill at that time. Actually, Jamal and I both, I think, Jamal, you were on the Hill at the same time. We were on the Hill, and I remember them saying that there could be a plane coming. We heard the security people starting to send us messages that we had to get our members to safe places, and we had to get to a safe place. So all I could think about was not only my fear, but the fear of all my friends and all the members that I know that were on the Hill and what they were going through and feeling in that moment. So it was like a slow burning fire, and my mouth just kept dropping and dropping and dropping. I just couldn't really fathom and believe what we were all sort of living through yesterday.
Jamal, you work in the news industry. I don't know if you were home or you happened to be somewhere in a studio. But what were your thoughts yesterday?
I was sitting in this very spot, and I was doing a discussion with. It was amazing. I was doing this discussion with the Brookings Institution around technology. I mean, other than politics, is my only other interest is around technology and diversity and all that kind of stuff. And I was with the Lieutenant Governor of Michigan, was on the panel with us, and we started at 2:00. About halfway through, you could tell he was starting to do something else. He wasn't participating as much. So the panel was over, and we all started checking our phones, and our phones were blowing up. And so Garland Gilchrist, who's Lieutenant Governor of Michigan, he's like, "Man, I am texting with people from the Michigan delegation right now, and they're telling me that they are on the floor in the gallery of the House. They are guns drawn, pointed at the doors, and they're passing out gas masks to the members who are left." Who are left in the room. Now, we've all seen that video now over the course of the last day, but we were getting this real time, and everybody sat there going, "What? Is that serious? Is that real?" So we all started checking in. I don't live on the Hill anymore, but I live not very far from there. And I'll tell you, we packed bags. We had a couple little kids. We packed bags. I made sure there's gas in the car and the car seats were ready. In case for some reason there were marauders and people sort of streaming through the streets, and we needed to just get out of the house and go someplace else. So it is the first time being in DC that I've ever felt like something may happen that I can't predict, and we could all be in jeopardy. And watching them run roughshod through the House of Representatives, almost unchecked, completely unchecked. That was a shaking moment.
Mo, you're down in Georgia. You're an attorney and a political consultant, and you've been working really hard on the ground there with Stacey Abrams and on this Warnock and Ossoff campaigns. And being in Georgia, but having lived in D.C., what were your thoughts in Georgia? Coming after such a big win on Tuesday, and then Wednesday we had this.
Yeah, so, we were still looking for the results from John Ossoff's race, and we were watching closely as those final tabulations were coming in from what was left over in Fulton County and what was left over in DeKalb. And so, I was just kind of like taking phone calls from folks that were calling and saying, congratulations, and I can't believe it, and so happy. And then I was calling people to tell them congratulations. And then all of a sudden I saw the highlight come across my phone that they were storming the Capitol. And at first I thought it was I thought something was going on in Georgia. And so I immediately, went to my phone and figured out that it was actually the U.S. Capitol. And so, I just started calling my friends in D.C. to find out what's going on. I did like everybody else, just watched it in disbelief. And then I went through this period where, you first go like, I can't believe this is happening. And then you go, I can't believe this is happening. Because what's been going on, and racism is stronger than anything else. And so it showed itself yesterday, and I'm not surprised at all by the behavior, all of the commentary about what if this had been a Black Lives Matter protest. Well, we just don't live by the same rules. So we don't, those kind of comparisons to me, are things that we already know about America. And so when I watched that, I just was like, wow, I am just concerned about what will happen from now to inauguration. And that's what I was really thinking about.
So you all mentioned a lot, and what we didn't talk about is the incident, and I'm calling it an incident. It wasn't a rally. It was an incident. It was meant to incite, where Trump gets in front of a crowd and gets them riled up. And they were right there in front of the White House. And all of us live, or have lived in D.C., so we know the proximity of the White House to the United States Capitol. So there's no way that those people could have marched from the White House toward the Capitol, and they did not, and the police did not know they were coming. But did you see, because my phone started blowing up when Trump was speaking. It was like people were like messaging me, are you watching this? And I had no intention to watch or to listen to what he had to say. And they were like, no, he's inciting a riot.
Yeah, I watched it.
Oh, yeah,
Same thing. I was tweeting it. He's deranged. But this guy is deranged. What he's saying right now, the president of the United States is, I don't know if you guys, I was at the Million Man March in 1995, right? And remember there were police everywhere. If you were in DC there, there were police everywhere. Everybody was nervous that, hundreds of thousands of Black men were coming to Washington, D.C., and Louis Farrakhan was going to declare the revolution, from the stage, right? I mean, he wanted us to like build businesses in our communities. That was basically the ask, right? After
the big ask.
But the president of the United States said, we are marching to the Capitol, and we are, and you got to be strong, and we won't tolerate the surrender caucus that's willing to give up. We will never give up. I was just like, wow, this is, talk about white privilege.
Well,
whenever you go to a rally, whether it's the Women's March or, if you're marching for whatever rights it is, there's always like a pre-show and everybody goes, fire it up, ready to go, fire it up, ready to go. And, you feel good and you get like, yourself together, you have your water and all this kind of stuff. His pre-show was storm the Capitol. And it's just unreal. It's just unreal.
And Rudy Giuliani didn't help. He talked about we're gonna settle this by combat. He actually used the word combat.
He did.
Yeah. Well, one of the scary things too is that we got 13 days left, and the fear of what can happen in the next 13 days. I don't care how you romanticize policy, politics, or otherwise. Everything is now off the table as of yesterday, because I struggle with how people associate decorum with this particular presidency and this president, and he has none of it. He doesn't understand it. But more importantly, the scary thing about this, and all of you all are consultants, advisors, and things like that, we have a president who has no friends. So he has no proper context on what's within reason, without a reason. And it's so debilitating with 13 days left. Who knows what he might do next? And there seems to be no control whatsoever. Again, the Democrats are romanticizing the 25th Amendment and things like that. But we're starting to see a subtle, Elaine Chao, I don't know who she's married to, but she resigned from DOT today with 13 days left. So basically, if the cabinet shrinks that amount, then you won't have an opportunity to affect it. But what is being taken when he leaves is going to be the larger question. But it's also going to be the political football for Joe Biden to unpack and also claim as his now new, in addition to things he wants to do, he has to manage through to get us back on track. And that is like one of the scariest things for me.
So before we go back, because we're going to come back and talk about this, I want to talk about a video that I saw earlier of behind the scenes that his son did, which, no mask and all that. But before that, let's go back to like some good stuff. Georgia. I mean, like, Georgia's been on my mind. Mo, thank you so much for what you did.
Yes.
I know there were countless other people that were down there. I've read so many things, about the young people who mobilized, who went out and worked and helped to make this happen. But, there's people act as if this is something that just started. Stacey has been working on this effort for a long time. What does it mean, not just for Georgia, but as a model for perhaps the rest of the country? I know I had a legislator today, Omaria Scott from Mississippi, who messaged me and asked me about some things. But, what does this mean for the South?
You talking to Mo?
Yeah, it was.
We may have lost her.
I think we lost her because of the sound.
Yeah, what do you think, Jamal?
Well, I was just going to say, I used to do politics, and I went to school, and like Nicole went to Spelman, I went to Morehouse. I went to school down in Atlanta. I did politics down there, ran city council races and a Senate race, and as communications director. And I will tell you, this is huge. And if you look at the numbers tell sort of the whole story. The last Democratic senator to win the Senate office was Zell Miller in 2000.
Wow.
There were 2.3 million total voters in that election. Zell Miller got 1.9 million. His opponent got 400,000. There were 2.3 million total voters. Raphael Warnock got like 2.27 million voters, right? So they're going to be like 4.5 million voters, maybe 4.6 million voters before it's over. They're twice as many voters. And if you go back and look at the difference, one of the things that occurred, there are 3 million more people in Georgia than there were 20 years ago. And Georgia used to be 65% white. Georgia is now 60% white. And it's not just the black people who moved there, because black numbers have ticked up about 3 points, but the Latino number has doubled. The Asian American number has increased. Like, all of Georgia is so much more diverse and so many more people who did not come out in the South. So in one sense, it's not really the Georgia that my old boss, Max Cleland, or Zell Miller got, elected in. It's a new Georgia that's a lot more people from my hometown in Detroit and Ohio and all those places who left Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and moved south to try to have a better life.
Go ahead, Pat.
You mentioned Max Cleland, and a lot of people forget about that story of who he was and what he meant to America. And he still wasn't good enough to represent Georgia. Right. Meaning that we're talking about a triple amputee. We're talking about a senator with one arm, missing 2 legs, acknowledged, decorated war hero and, veteran, just overall great guy. And when he came up for re-election, how they turned against him to reestablish that narrative of what Georgia should be. And I looked at yesterday's victory as what Georgia really is. Because there are a lot of Fortune 500 companies down in Atlanta now for obvious reasons, the diversity of it, the strength of the universities. But the other sweet spot of Georgia, those small little hamlet towns that are 50, 60, 80 miles outside of Atlanta. And those textile areas that have long gone since died off, and those people came out and they held the legacy of what they remember about what they wanted their Georgia to be, and they were not punked and pushed around like in other exercises. So that was a great thing for me.
Absolutely, the folks who are on the ground will tell you. Nicole, go ahead. The first on the ground will tell you they concentrated on those Black rural counties from Columbus to Macon up to Augusta, and really focus on getting those Black voters out. But Mo probably knows more about all this than I do.
Yeah,
guys, I'm sorry about that.
I want to let Mo talk, but then I want, because you asked about what does it mean for the South, and I have some thoughts about what it means for states beyond Georgia. But I think since we got Mo back, we want to hear how they did it and just all of that.
Yeah, and my brother is watching. He's down in Georgia. He's talking. He just commented saying what? But yeah, how did y'all do it?
So I just want to say that you are absolutely right when you say that this work did not start, in this cycle or even in 2018 when Stacey's election was stolen from her, but a playbook that she created more than 10 years ago. And she put this playbook into play in 2018 during her gubernatorial campaign, but there was so much voter suppression going on that it just robbed her of that percentage that would have taken her over. So she simply gathered us all back up together and created Fair Fight and went about doing the same things we had done in 2018, was reach voters exactly where they are, right? You have to bring a certain amount of, Georgia has always had the Black voter. It's did they turn out? Did they feel like there was something that was worth coming out to vote for? So it was, definitely concentrating in the metro area, but really going outside of metro and talking to people, like I said, right where they are. So like the regular things you do, you go to the barbershop, you go to all these community places, but you have to really talk to people about what is on the line for them. And I think that we met a perfect storm of the pandemic, the social unrest, the way people were feeling about the president. I mean, just a perfect storm of people saying enough is enough. And so we started going, I never before had so many students participate who were at home, virtually learning, and come and say, like, what can I do? I want to be a part of an HBCU. Hi, Emil. I want to be a part of a HBCU forum, or I want to call all of my friends and I want to tell them about it. So, we grabbed everybody that we know, from Spelman, from Morehouse, from, all of the colleges in Georgia. And it was just a college contingent. And then it was just like your homeboys on the streets and the barbershops and everything. And everybody began to believe that we could make a change. And it was just a very simple message. You matter. What we're doing matters to your life, and you will be the difference if you turn out and vote. And so, there was a huge, between the general and the runoff, there was a huge thrust to register all 18-year-olds that would turn 18 during that time period, and to track that. And Fair Fight has an amazing tracking mechanism for finding people right where they are and texting them and phone banking. I mean, some weekends we would wake up on a Saturday morning and we would text by 5 o'clock 2 million people. And so it was just a relentless work that everybody did to make this happen. And it was Georgia deserves this win. This win could have happened a while back if there wasn't so many eyes on Kemp and so many eyes on Brad Raffensperger. And I also want to say this, that like the idea that Brad Raffensperger is on television talking about, I'm not going to, go against my job and do what Trump wants me to do or whatever. He has gone against his duties many times. Many times. He has chosen this time not to do something that would disrupt the people's right to vote. But he has been a voter suppressor right along with Brian Kemp. So let's not put him in the category of good person, because he's now making sure votes are counted. He has not made sure votes counted in the past.
And thank you for sharing that, because and especially this part about going to where the voters are. There is a video, and I swear I've played this video a lot since before November. It's a video, it's a cartoon, and it says we're going to turn this MF blue, and it's catchy, and it's like just the diversity that I saw in it, and I was like, wow, I had never seen anything like that. But it's something to be said about recognizing who your audience is and speaking their language. And, just the motivation and the things that we heard. My brother told me about how there were polls and precincts that were closed compared to where it was in November. So it still seemed, at least from us, from the outside, like there was still this effort to try to suppress the vote and make it harder for people to vote. But the voter excitement seemed to be high. And this was just a note. It seems like this was only the second and third runoff elections that were won by Democrats over the last 30 years. So this is, off to a great job that you all did.
Yeah, let me tell you that in 2008, I worked on the Jim Martin Saxby-Chambliss Senate runoff race. And Jim Martin was running at the same time President Obama won. And then there was this runoff, and Black voters were like, we got our Black president, we are done. And we tried to do all these things to get voters to come out and got on the ground. But it was just a very different environment then, and a very different playbook. And the playbook that Stacey Abrams has built and been dedicated to and has taught and is research based and are real numbers is what will help turn other southern states the same blue that Georgia is now, and is a model for getting to voters and reaching them where they are and motivating them to come out and exercise their power. And I'm really, really proud of not just Stacey, but everybody. Oh, I'm really proud of Stacey when she went on Versus as well, because that was hugely important for the reach that these platforms have to talk about the runoffs. And these are the kinds of different things that we have to do in order to engage people where they are. And that's a perfect example of engaging people where they are.
Nicole.
Yes.
Get in. Yeah, you were saying, we were talking about, what does this mean? I mean, you work on the Hill. This is huge. The Democrats have, this is the first time since 2008, 2009 that the Democrats have the House, the Senate, and the presidency. What are they going to do with it? And what do people who voted, who got engaged in this voting process, what do they need to do to keep the momentum going and make sure that we keep our knee on their neck in terms of the Republicans, to make sure that we get our policies passed?
Right. Well, I think 2020 was really interesting with respect to mobilizing voters in two big ways. For a long time, I think voters were sort of just like not really clued into what government does, how it actually impacts your life. And they just sort of trusted that government happened. And when they needed services, they were able to get them. Well, one of the things about the Trump administration when they came in, he said, I'm going to be a wrecking ball. And Steve Bannon said, I'm going to get rid of the administrative state. And they started systematically doing that. And I think, first of all, people started noticing that things that they were used to seeing and used to getting were getting slowed, or they weren't able to get. And then two things happened. Number one, George Floyd happened. And at that point, people started really looking at the federal government to say, how do you stop this? How do you get involved? And they found that there were limitations to the federal government and what they could do in each of these communities with respect to sort of police reform and other things. In that regard, we've seen that states and localities were able to respond and react faster. The second thing was this pandemic. And people really saw, on the one hand, what it meant when we've always talked about a social safety net. You saw what it meant to not have one. And we also saw, when the Democrats were passing things like the HEROES Act and other things, the power of the federal government to put money and certain things in people's hands. To me, I'm still sitting here going, I don't understand how come so many Republicans did not see value in sending money to states and localities. I don't know why we didn't have more stimulus checks. I don't know why we didn't have 2 or 3 tranches of money into the PPP program that was supposed to help small businesses. And instead, people were, especially Republicans, were happy to just stand by and look at all of these things in our economy just crater. People needing jobs, people needing health care, people needing services that the federal government could and should be providing in our social safety net. So now, to Mo's point, not only do we know how to meet people where they are, people have a better sense of why you should care about government. For a long time, and I think the last time that I came on your podcast, we kind of talked about, well, we told people they had to come out for Barack Obama, which they did. And then a lot of people, especially a lot of our cousins, a lot of folks who are working sort of check to check, didn't really see a difference, right? We said we had to have Barack Obama. We put Barack Obama in the White House, and they didn't see a difference. So now I think we have more data, more information, more personal experience to explain to people why your vote matters, why the government, who's running the government, who's in the government, why it matters.
But now, how do we keep people involved? How do we keep them engaged?
Well, I mean, again, to Brian's point, getting people elected is only part. I mean, it's the tip of the beginning of what we need to do, right? Because now we do have the House. We have a split in the Senate with a tip towards the Democrats, and we have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the White House. There's a huge agenda that we have. And quite frankly, we've got a 2-year sprint to get things done, right? We may have more than 2 years, but why I say it's 2 years is that our good friend, our classmate, our Morehouse brother, Raphael Warnock, has to be up for re-election in 2 years. So we don't know if he'll win that. I think he will, because he's going to be running along Stacey when she's running for governor again. You know, fingers crossed and all of that. But we don't know what's going to happen, and so we have to try and run the tables on that as best we can on all the things that we need to fix. And there are so many things. Not only if you think about the 1 through 10 that the Democrats have talked about, it's everything from immigration reform, it's minimum wage, it's healthcare changes, it's voting rights, it's police reform, it's violence against women, gun control, environmental issues, labor reforms, OSHA, protections for workers, and you have COVID, and you have trying to stabilize healthcare on top of it. That's a lot. And that's a lot to try and get done in 2 years. But as constituents, as voters, we have to continue to tell people this is why you have to keep up the hill. And we have to hold everyone accountable for all of this. We have to hold all the Democrats, all the Republicans accountable, and make sure that they are pushing the agenda that we want, that we know will be best for our communities, and that they said that they were going to push. We have to hold Kamala Harris and Joe Biden accountable. We have to hold Nancy Pelosi accountable. We have to hold everyone accountable. And that's why we have to stay involved.
So Jamal, from a media standpoint, what do you see? And again, I want to go to Mo. I'm going to ask all three of you all the same question. Then I want Patrick and Earl to get into this. But what do you see? What is it from a media standpoint that we need to be feeding and getting out there that the media will take on that helps to drive the message? What's missing, and what do you see that we can be doing as citizens to keep this to keep our foot on the pedal?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Barack Obama was actually a really good president. He got a lot of things done. He was a horrible marketer as a government official. He was a great campaigner when he was running. But in terms of telling his story as he went along about what he was up to and why it mattered to people, I think they didn't put, and he would probably tell you this, they didn't put a lot of effort into making that work. On the other hand, you got Donald Trump, who all he does is market, right? Like he doesn't care at all about the substance. It's all marketing. So hopefully the Biden Harris people kind of find that sweet spot in between there, and they spend some time doing it. But it's incumbent upon each one of us who have these platforms to try to tell the story, to get the data, get the information, and talk about where it's coming from. One of the things that would happen with the Obama administration is they would pass a bill or put something in a bill, but they wouldn't tell people it was there, so nobody knew they had this benefit, but nobody knew where it came from. They did the after the investment, after the 2009 crash, they put all that money out, the $900 billion. But I think it was very hard for people to understand what was the Obama money and what money came from someplace else. So I think you got to tell that story, and it's going to be incumbent upon a lot of us to try to tell it. I'll say this was a little bit different. It's related to what Nicole said, but it's a little bit different. I'm very worried about the next 4 years, and I'm worried not just the next 2 years, but the next 4 years, because if the institutions of government do not find a way to make life better for working class people in this country and to chart a course for how they can take care of their families and live decent lives, I think what happened in the Capitol was just the beginning. And I think that we're going to see not only from the right, I think you're going to see from the left a bunch of people who also are disenchanted with how the government works. And maybe they're not rioting, but they're also not going to have any use for some mainstream politician like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, and they're going to be looking for somebody else who can overturn the apple cart. So I just think, or they lose confidence in the whole thing altogether and refuse to participate. So I think it's incumbent upon the people in this government to realize they're on a very short clock. They got to get some real things done.
Mo, you're on the ground, you've been on the ground, a while, and you gave us a great description in terms of, what it was you all did to mobilize voters. Any insight in terms of, and I'm asking this question because I think it's really important over the next 2 years that we figure out how to keep and maintain the excitement and the energy, because there are going to be some losses too in the midst of this. You're not going to win every battle in Congress just because you have control. What is it that we need to be doing to make sure that we can keep our foot on the pedal and make sure that our elected officials stay focused on immigration reform and DACA and the minimum wage and college tuition and climate and all these other issues that people came out and voted on?
And criminal justice, police accountability. Police accountability.
Oh, absolutely. But, before those federal issues, I wanted to get real local in Georgia again, that in less than 10 days from now, our General Assembly meets, which is all Republican. Both the House and the Senate in Georgia are still Republican. And believe me, that the very first things that they are going to attack are the voting rights in Georgia. And they already have said that they will start changing the way people can vote absentee ballot. So before we start worrying about what's happening in Washington and what Raphael Warnock is doing and what John Ossoff is doing, we need to make everybody accountable at home, and we need to make sure people understand basic civics, because people did come out in great numbers in Georgia, but they may not make the link that in 10 days from now, the General Assembly will be attacking all of the things that they just did, which could mean that in 2 years from now, it will look very different how you can vote in Georgia. So it's our job to get that basic civics lesson out to people, get them involved with their local senator, their state house rep, and know who those people are and know how to reach them and get their contact information to be in contact with them and to say, no, we do not want that. We need to line up our lawyers. We need to it's about to be a battle in Georgia over what will happen the next time there's an election.
Pat, Earl, why don't you guys get in?
I think. Oh, I'm listening. This is a great conversation, by the way. I'm with the best team in the house. I love it.
One of the things that Jamal kind of referenced, and going back to the Obama administration, was that one of the deficits at that time was that he hired folks who didn't have a rapport or super strong relationships on the Hill. So oftentimes a lot of things that were happening were associated with the president, and members of Congress had no context to be able to explain it to their constituents. So my hope this time is that the Biden team feels a dynamic team that has strong relationships on the Hill, especially on the House side, because Nicole, we'll be like a 3 to 4 seat majority now, which means is that you get a 5-seat majority, which means that you can see an evolution of a voting bloc that will pretty much hijack the progress and the expectations and needs of America for some very singular issues. And so that's one of the biggest things I would say is that the Biden administration hasn't come in. Jamal's absolutely correct. Barack Obama was akin to Jimmy Carter and how much he tucked away in bills, but no one knew what they were until years later when you began to kind of do it. But you've got to get a team out there that's constantly talking and telling the story of the need of the administration and what they need for folks. I think one of the other big things is kind of exciting is that we now have 2 Raphaels in the U.S. Senate. And I say that from Rafael Cruz, our good friend Ted Cruz, who seems to always be Ted versus Raphael. And the second thing is Raphael Warnock, and he's from the water people off of Savannah. And I think he's going to bring a homily that we need. We need a conscience of the Senate. We need somebody who's going to remind us constantly that the reason why we should be doing these things is because we need to get out of the way so they can get done. I started a personal campaign that I think Senator Warnock should be on the Appropriations Committee, because that's going to be the end game right there on a lot of transactions. I don't want him buried in a policy exercise. I want him being affecting change as needed, because he's touching lives every day. He's already said he still will be in his pulpit on Sunday or close to a pulpit to tell the story that we need to hear as Americans. And I think the great thing about it is that get the folks who we need as speaker boxes in relevant, real positions. Stop this legacy thing of, well, it's your turn. If you're a poor storyteller, then don't be a part of the process, because that's what we're going to need right now, kind of coming out of the gate.
So, and I guess there's so much stuff that's going on. One of the first things that comes to mind, and then before we wrap up this segment, I do want to go back to what we saw happen yesterday. But I remember as a kid, I always would hear family and Black folks say, every time we make an advance in something, they change the rules. And I feel like that's what we're seeing play out right now. Every time we get close to something, we win something, they change the rules. And to me, in order to change that and to affect that is us finding, how do we keep each other engaged, and how do we look at, as Mo mentioned, it's the state legislatures, it's the city council members, it is the civics lessons. We do have to keep reminding people keep acting as if the president and the governor and the mayor have all the power, and the real people who make policy are the Congress, the state legislatures, the city councils. And so we've got to continue teaching those lessons and getting people to recognize it's not the figurehead that does it. It's the people that are in these other positions. And if you think you can do it, as former President Barack Obama said, if you think you can do it better, then go out and get a petition and get people to sign it and run yourself. And so I think that we've got to figure out, how are we getting people even more engaged in this? I'm hoping we're going to see, and I know we are, that some of those young people that were on the ground that helped to make Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff our next United States senators, that they're going to run for office. And I just want to say this. I thought that it was an incredible picture. Imagine this, because I stayed up and I'm still tired because I didn't sleep much the last couple of nights. First off, a Black man won in Georgia. So my thoughts go to C.T. Vivian and Joseph Lowry and Martin Luther King and John Lewis. Then a Jewish man, Julian Bond, right? Andy Young, Ella Baker. I didn't mention a lot of women, but I keep saying this. There are so many women who were actively engaged and made the civil rights movement move that we'll never know their names. But it's so telling that Stacey Abrams and Mo are right there, and that it's Black women leading that made this happen. So like your shirt says, trust Black women, because Black women have gotten us through the November election and have gotten us through this January election. But the image that I had now is also thinking about the civil rights workers who went missing in Mississippi, and a Black man and a Jewish guy, and here you have a Black man and a Jewish man, the son of immigrants, who's now the United States senators, and those two men winning put a Black woman who is now the president of the Senate, will be the president of the Senate, in control. And I just think that there's so much to tell in this whole story, and the story is still being written.
Can I just say this, Atiba? Can I get in on this?
Absolutely.
Number one, John Ossoff owes Raphael Warnock rent on that seat that he's sitting in, because I'm convinced he wouldn't have it if it wasn't for the fact that he was on that seat. It's
we wouldn't even know the
guys who got rings from the Bulls when Jordan was playing. They all need to be paying him part of their salary. But number two is, I think it's an amazing thing that the majority makers in the United States Senate right now are HBCU grads.
Oh,
it's
right.
Raphael Warnock from Morehouse College and Kamala Harris from Howard University. And so the two of them are the 50th and 51st vote for getting everything done in the United States Senate that Joe Biden's going to need. And I think that someone else talked about this, but I think it's incredibly important. That is the argument number one for why HBCUs are so important. They're not there. They're not there like randomly because they went to HBCUs. They're there in part because they went to HBCUs. Right. And it's the leadership that comes out of those institutions and the networks that they create that really make the leaders that throughout really Black American history that have really led this country. So
I'm sorry. Can we do an HBCU roll call right now? Go ahead, Nicole.
I want to say it's not. I mean, that it doesn't just stop with those two majority makers, because we also have our Morehouse brother Cedric Richmond that has the ear of the president. We also have Mr. Clyburn, who also has a storied history with HBCUs, not only going to them, supporting them, having his name on some of them, but he was basically somebody who saved our democracy in the primaries. He said, we're not going to do this and he had the moral center. To Patrick's point about how that moral center is so important, he used that to bring our party together around this coalition candidate that is Joe Biden. We can't forget that. And I think, again, Black America has been trying to save America for a very long time. If they'd only let us do it. And now I think
Right.
we're gonna do it. Like, we have no choice now, because either they're coming for us, they've put us in a position where they're either coming for us, we gotta come for them. They came for us. Y'all understand that phrase? They came for us, we coming for them. And I think it's important, and we have to hold them accountable. For the people that they're appointing, for the issues that they're raising as priorities. I mean, for example, I think one of the things we have to watch are the federal judgeships. One of the things that in this 2 years they're going to be able to do is run the table on, I'm hoping, every federal judgeship that's open right now, because that's what the Republicans did. We need to get, and I want to see almost all of them people of color. I don't want to see, I'm sorry, but I don't want to see anybody going to the federal bench right now the next 2 years that is not a person of color. So that's number one. And then number two, if something happens to one of those Supreme Court nominees, Joe Biden has already talked about nominating a Black female for that. We have to hold him accountable. So we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot
Nicole,
of work to do.
Nicole, can I say real quick? If a slot
before we jump over HBCUs,
yes, ma'am. No, I was going to say, Nicole.
Before we jump on.
Y'all playing hot potato? Go ahead, Patrick.
Just let me say this. If a slot comes open on the Supreme Court, Stacey Abrams' sister has to be in motion and play for that. That's all I'm going to say.
Go ahead, Mo.
Okay, and let me just say this before we leave the whole HBCU pride. I just want to say that, with two spelling sisters on this call right now, and Stacey Abrams providing the playbook for how this election was won and delivering Georgia to America. It is just a testament to going to school that teach you to put your ego aside, that teach you to care about the facts and to get the work done. Because at any point, Stacey could have ran for a position. She could have asked for something. She's about the work. And so are the women on this call, because we've been working for a long time together. And so are so many generations of women that have gone and had this experience, have been educated through these kinds of systems at HBCUs. And now is the time when we get to bring our brilliance to the table. And you see that we have. So
I'm glad they teach all that at Spelman, because they don't teach us to put our egos aside at Morehouse.
and I can tell you as a FAMU graduate, we learned a lot of life lessons as we learned a lot of life lessons that I see playing out in American political politics now. The type of discipline that the Abrams campaign and the things that you all have been able to do in Georgia, Mo, it reminds me, the discipline is beyond reproach, in terms of not compromising your message, not getting distracted, not getting turned around, and keeping everything as local as possible. It almost reminds me of HBCU pride during homecoming. Like, you rep your school, you're proud of your school, and you're going to do everything you can to remind people how great your school is. And that's what I saw play out in Georgia over and over again. So y'all's playbook it reminds me a lot of FAMU's homecomings from my vantage point, in terms of the pride that you all brought to your effort. And I can't say enough about that.
Well, I want to say that you're only as good as your leader. And I'm not, trying to make Stacey into something superhuman, but she is brilliant. And she created a playbook, and she asked everyone to follow it. And everybody did.
And I'll say this, Mo. Go ahead,
I'm
Nicole.
just sad that we have COVID and we're not able to do something for the inauguration, because it would be the biggest HBCU homecoming celebration. We've been able to come together. This would have been off the chain. And I'm sad, because I'm going to miss that party, because y'all know I would have been up in the middle of it the whole day.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, speaking of parties, that in the last administration, everybody wanted to get that invite to the White House. I think in the next one, it's going to be like, what's happening at the Naval Observatory? Is Kamala doing like the after party? Is the afterglow at the Naval Observatory?
I've already walked home from that street drunk already, so it's it was a few years ago. It wasn't this week, but it was.
I want to thank you all for taking time and being part of the show. What we're trying to do is we do not have a good history of keeping the show within an hour. But I am going to say this: Virginia State University. It's and somebody put 1994. For me, HBCUs are just they're so important, but it's our homecomings that like I look forward to, and I'm looking forward to. I'm actually hoping that in some way, when we come out of this pandemic, that a lot of our universities figure out how to do something collectively, because we really missed going home. And as what I try to explain to people who did not go to a Black school is going to homecoming is going home. Right. And so it's I missed being able to go back this year, but I think that I'm looking forward to the first one after the pandemic because I know it's going to be off the chain.
Before we move on, I actually did want to talk about next steps in Georgia. I was waiting. I was peaceful. What I wanted to add specifically was, Jamal, you touched on campaigning and that being Barack's strength and marketing not so much. I think that touches on the main point, which I feel like if we all have the ball and we've done phenomenal getting there, amount of work, I think the next step is to govern in such a way where that does the speaking for us. I think the campaigns where you get a chance to tell people who you are for the intro. Now you're building a new resume, and that's the beautiful part about where we are right now. For many people our age and even older, we saw most of the Black experience about being limited to access. Now that you actually have access, now that you're in the chair, now that you're in the room, now that you have a microphone, now that you have the country listening, and since nobody knows struggle the way we know struggle in this country, nobody knows financial management when there is no finances to manage better than we do as a culture. It's time to actually look at those universal experiences. We know not everybody has access to everything, but we do know that everybody's got representation on the floor in terms of what they don't have access to. It's the reason why you hear on the left kids asking for somebody to pay for their the school loans. On the right, we're starting to talk about why did my paycheck get hit specifically for this healthcare thing I didn't ask for. Now, I'm not saying either way. I'm clearly far to the left, and I'm super happy about what happened in Georgia. But what I'm also recognizing is that the best way to win 4 years from now, 6 years from now, 2 years from now, is to do the job starting January 20th and making sure that not just the words match, but make sure that our deeds match and that we tell people what we just did. And I think that, I'm not saying it's going to be the silver bullet, but I do think it helps. That's all I had to say on that topic. We're good.
I think that's right. To tell people what you did is probably like, that's the other part is important. You got to do it, but you also have to tell people that you did it.
Right.
I mean, Joe Biden probably the first thing he needs to do is put vaccine in 150 million people's arms, right?
There you go.
We can go back to work and our kids can go back to school and we can start to have some semblance of a life. If he can put vaccines in people's arms and then get the economy so people can go to work and kids can go to school, he might have a 60% approval rating. Yeah. Right? Like that's a lot of what people need.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to tell folks is that if a tree falls in the forest, how do you know it makes a sound? It's like you got the messaging is just important. But listen, I want to thank you all. We could keep going on and on. We do that all the time, but we got to have to wrap this up. But I hope that you all will accept an invitation in the future to come back. This has been a wonderful and great conversation, and we've had 3 dynamic people. So thank you, Nicole Venable, Mo Ivory, and Jamal Simmons.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. All right, Pat and Earl. Earl, you that was a dynamic conversation, but we still got to get to thanks management and for the culture. So I'm gonna let
All
flip
right.
a coin and let you figure out which one of you all want to go first.
Yeah, let me
All
go.
right.
You want to go?
I got you. I got you. Go for it, my friend.
What a culture.
So,
Patrick,
Atiba, things come to us in different ways. And one of the things for the culture, for as much as the inciting of riots and the loss of life is something that, is one of those realities of protesting in America. When you think about Crispus Attucks and things like that, the first person to die, American Revolution and things like that. But I'm getting word that a Capitol Hill policeman has lost his life due to injuries suffered yesterday. Still waiting to confirm that. But just for a brief moment, I want people to understand is that somebody lost their life who was there to protect a sacred institution from a riot that was incited by our sitting president. So if nothing else is as egregious as, while you do have a right to protest, people are still allowed to be able to safely return home after a protest. And to hear that a member of the Capitol Hill Police Department has lost his life is so devastating. And it just kind of reminds you yet again, words do matter. Actions have consequences. And I hope like hell the incoming attorney general sets up a special court or whatever to find out who came into our house and disrespected it in such a way that it will always tarnish what it has meant for so many people over the years. But just for a moment, thinking about that cop, if it's true, who's lost his life due to injuries sustained yesterday from the hands of those groups that were up there storming the U.S. House of Representatives, U.S. Capitol. So for the culture, think about your actions, think about your words, because they do matter and they have consequences. And where there are children out there who might not see their dad, who won't see their dad ever again. That's for the culture.
thank you, Patrick. And with that, we're gonna move right into our next segment with Earl Wyatt. Thanks management.
Thanks management. Well, I'm actually going to touch on the exact same thing. There's really very few things we can talk about right now. If we talk about anything else, it looks like we're not paying attention. Short. I was wondering, how did everybody know to leave? And that's when I know we're probably going to see on opposite sides of this, but follow me when I get all the way through it. I honestly believe the smartest thing that happened yesterday was the curfew. The curfew going out at 3:00, I think, was playing chess in a room full of people who were playing checkers. And let me walk you through why. And because it actually feeds to the attorney general part. First thing, the only people who are not getting that message are the people who are at the rally. They're not getting the text. They're not getting it. They're not listening to local radio. They're not listening to local television. They didn't get that. They might have gotten the text message, but I don't think they were paying attention. The people who did were the locals, the people who stayed home, stayed in. So at the end of the night, when you start getting curfew violations, who's going to be getting the curfew violations except for the people who are out there doing it? So when you have a Capitol Police Department that's not actually doing what they need to be doing in terms of protecting the actual Capitol, I swear to God, it's in the fucking logo on the uniform. The idea that they didn't actually protect that is a problem. But if I take it a step further and I say, okay, well then the people who did get arrested for curfew violations, it sounds like a small thing, but they get fingerprinted, they get held on to. And when we do have to backtrack through what happened when domestic terrorism took place, we actually have a record of people we can actually send through the criminal justice system to hopefully it's Merrick Garland. So at this point, we've got a rally to prison pipeline that I think I'd like to see happen. But that's just me doing my thanks management thing.
All right, that was thanks management. Let's go right quick into the lightning round.
Oh, hold on. Graphic. I got it.
All right. Will Trump be at the inauguration on January 20th as the former president of the United States? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
No.
No.
All right.
No.
Oh, what's your answer? What's your answer?
No.
Unanimous.
I mean, think about it, Atiba. You're talking about an element that you all have both been raised with. It's called character. You can see you claim a victory and you can see the defeat, but you still acknowledge being a part of the game. He has none of that, and so he has no character. He's a friendless president. There's nobody who's going to motivate him to be there. There's no pep talk that you can give this guy. He's going to be somewhere amongst his people, amongst his sons, somewhere crazy, lamenting how he could have done a better job and how he was robbed.
I think he's gonna be. I think he's gonna have a rally somewhere with his people, and you know, I think the security threat on the city should be raised, and I think that keeping the National Guard there at least for the next 30 days is the right move. So yeah. Well, listen. With that, I wish that we could go longer. This has been an amazing show, but. We made a New Year's Eve New Year's resolution, and we're gonna try and keep this to an hour, and we are now at 1 hour. So with that all said, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Tune in again next week for Chalkboard Conversations presented by Party Politics US on Spikefish Radio. This is your host Atiba, and I am signing out with Earl and Patrick, and we'll be back next week, hopefully with our other co-hosts.
The ladies from JJ Fad were missed this podcast. The ladies from JJ Fad were missed.
Most certainly. Very much missed.
All right. Good night.
Take care.
Good night.